Hi, I'm Bart Hanson. I'm the owner and lead instructor for CrushLivePoker.com. The following hand comes from our call-in show that we record live at 2 p.m. Eastern Time every Monday. If you enjoy this video, hit that like button, and if you want to submit to be on the show, take a look at the information in the description.
This is a hand from Rivers Casino in Schenectady.
Oh, okay.
It's a 1-2 300 cap game.
We had a guy call from River Schenectady. I think it was last week too, and I always said, "Did you see Sean Deeb kicking around there?" Because I know that's his home casino.
Yeah, I heard about that on that last call, so I've been looking out for him. Haven't seen him yet, but I'll keep my eye out.
Interesting. So Schenectady, which is right around Albany, fairly new casino, right? Less than 3 years old, I want to say, something like that.
Yep, yeah, something like that.
Of course, I frequented the first casino in New York State, which was 30 minutes to the east of where I went to school in Verona, New York. Turning Stone,
Oh, wow.
and I went to Syracuse.
Oh, yeah, I like Turning Stone.
And I was there before they even had poker back in the late 90s. Wow. So, anyways, 1-2 300 no limit. Okay.
All right, yeah. So I'm playing against this villain that I've played with before. He's a young, tight player. He probably plays 10-15% of hands. Pretty position aware. He's shown down like Broadway hands, pocket pairs. Doesn't really get out of line. Haven't seen him do a big bluff.
Okay.
So the villain is in UTG +1,
okay.
and he opens to $10, and we're 600 effective, and I have Queen-8 of clubs in the button.
All right, so raise to $10, which is a 5x open. Is that about standard?
Yeah, it's pretty standard. 10. A lot of limpers. It's a pretty passive game, so a lot of limpers, and then typical opens are 10 to 15 at most.
Okay. I mean, preflop police, this is a pretty speculative hand here. The only way that I would play this hand is if, I was somewhat deeper, either closing the big blind. I mean, I guess you could make a case that you could call on the button, but in a non-ante game, you don't really have to play this hand, VPIP this hand. I don't know what the structure is or if there's a rake or a drop, but the advantage of playing 1-2 is you're not going to have many people squeeze you in the blind, so...
right.
You make the call, okay?
Okay. So, yeah, we're 600 effective. I make the call from the button, and the big blind calls. So we're 3 ways to the flop.
Okay.
So the flop is Queen of diamonds, 9 of spades, 7 of clubs.
Okay, so Queen 9-7 here, rainbow with 1 club. So you flop top pair, okay?
Yep.
Okay.
And the villain leads for 15. I call, and the big blind folds.
All right, so +1 bets 15. Hero calls. Big blind folds. Seems pretty standard right now. Looks like the pot is maybe $60 minus the rake, I guess.
Yeah, about 60 minus the rake.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so then the turn is an 8 of hearts.
Okay, so you now turn queens up, right?
Yeah. Right.
Now, what else?
Right.
What other draw does that 8 bring in that sometimes people will miss?
Well, there's a straight draw because you have 7, 8, 9 on the flop,
right?
And there aren't any sort of flush draws that the 8 of hearts brought.
Right. Actually, Jack 10 is open ended. I thought for a second it was double gutted, but sometimes people miss. Like if it's King 9-7, Jack 10 is also double gutted. Right. King 9-7, and then Ace Queen 8 is also another double gut for Jack 10. So there are several double gutters that sometimes people miss. Straight open ended though here, Queen 9-7 turn is an 8. Usually you're going to have far more Jack 10s as the button field caller than the preflop raiser, but the preflop raiser I guess could have, he could have Jack 10 suited. You obviously lose to pocket 9s, pocket queens, something like that. Probably 5-6, which is the bottom end of a straight, I assume is not necessarily betting off. But okay, I like your hand here.
Great, yeah. I thought the flop call was a little speculative, but once I picked up the 8 on the turn, I felt much better about my hand.
Why is the flop call speculative? You have top pair, right?
He has a pretty tight range. I have top pair. I don't have a great kicker. If I picked up a club on the turn, I would feel a lot better about it.
Well, yes, that's true, but you obviously have to call with top pair, even though you're not closing the action on the flop. I mean, if you had a hand like maybe 9-10, that might be speculative with a guy behind you, but it's a clear call, even three ways versus a C bet. So all right, so you turn the queens up, okay?
Got it. Yeah. So the villain bets 20, and I raise to 60.
All right, so plus
And then
one bets 20. Hero raises to 60. So one of the things, I don't know how long you've been playing for. If you've been playing 1-2, how long have you played live poker for?
I've been playing about 2-3 years.
Okay, so usually at this level, bet sizes tend to telegraph strength of hand here. And when I see a $20 bet, unless the guy is just totally clueless, you wouldn't really expect this to be no pair, right? Like ace
Right.
king, something like that. Ace 10, I guess, turns open ended, but ace jack turns a gut shot. But usually people will play where if they're bluffing in this spot, they would, if they want to bluff, they will sort of bet larger. This looks to me to be like a scared bet, where it wouldn't surprise me if he has a queen. He might even have an overpair here, but I would be shocked if your hand is not good here. So, a lot of people would look at this in paper and they're like, oh, well, you've got queen 8 here. Is this hand strong enough to raise? Yes, it's absolutely strong enough to raise here. I feel like against this sizing, and I don't expect somebody at 1-3 to fold out ace queen, king queen, aces, king, something like this. So I agree with
Right.
your raise. To be honest with you, I'm probably going to raise larger. This guy
Bigger.
bets,
Okay.
yeah, he bets 20 and a 60. I might make it, 85 to 100. And I don't know, one of the techniques that I do here, and I don't know if you have big chips, if you're just playing with all $5 chips and ones, if the big chips are allowed, but what I would do, I like to call this spiking the pot live, is if I had $100 chip, I'd go 90, 95, you know what I'm saying? And
I
I
see.
would use an oversized chip. And the reason why I'm doing that is for value, because I want to get the pot large, but I want my opponent to see the size of the pot. So if you use a
Yeah.
$100 chip as a raise, even if you're going to only raise, say, to 90, when your opponent calls, he's going to actually see that chip in the pot. And for somebody that's
Hmm.
not constantly keeping track of, say, pot size, they will see that on the river if you're going to make a value bet at the end, as opposed to sort of a pile of $5 chips. I mean, that's
Got
just
it.
a really kind of live technique. But I would have
Got
raised
it. Yeah, I had
larger.
some 25s in there. I used two 25s and two fives, but
Yeah.
yeah, I get the point of making it bigger. I was targeting queens and maybe over pairs there.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think any of those hands are going to fold. So yeah, maybe you make it 90 and you put out 4 quarter chips or something like that instead of putting in like a
Yeah,
stack of nickels. But okay, so you raise to 60.
great. Yeah, so then the river is the eight of spades.
So your opponent calls.
Yeah, yeah, but the opponent thinks for a while and then calls.
So the pot's 180.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
and the river is the eight of spades.
Okay, so you fill up here, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And at that point, I'm just thinking like, how much money can I get in the pot?
Right. I mean, it actually doesn't change much here. Like, there's versus the range that you're targeting, there really isn't
Yeah,
that much of a difference between you basically having an 8 come here at the end versus, say, like a deuce coming, really. I mean, unless the guy has like pocket sevens, or something like that, where you now
hmm,
beat him, or he had Jack 10 and he was slow playing. A lot of that time, that's going to be 3 bet from out of position on the turn if he actually turned it. So it doesn't actually make
right.
that much of a difference here.
Got it, got it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So then the villain bets 125.
Okay, so plus one bets 125 here from up front. So he leads out here for 125 after you raise the turn. So this is really interesting here, right? Because this is kind of a bizarre thing. So what are you losing to here, obviously?
Losing to queens,
Okay.
nines,
Yep. Queens and nines, right? Those are the only hands you're losing to.
and I'm beating straights and sevens.
Right. So what did I say about the turn sizing from your opponent from out of position and what it tells me about this hand?
Yeah, you said it was a little small, the turn sizes.
Yeah, I
Okay.
definitely think it's small. I would be shocked if your opponent has nines here. The way that this is played, betting out 20. Queens, sort of the same thing. Of course, you block that. There's only one combo of queens. And at this level, it wouldn't really surprise me if your opponent now somehow thinks that like aces or kings are good because the board paired, even though a very large portion of the range that you might have, especially if you're going to VPip Jack 10 off from the button, is going to be Jack 10. So if you were up against a more thinking player, they would realize that this river doesn't really make any difference for aces and kings. But against a guy playing 1-2, he might just look at this like he's got, oh, I've got aces up, I've got kings up, something like this. I mean, this is a must raise here. If you had like a hand like 7-8 or something like that, where you had like the lowest full house, first of all, I would still raise, but there'd be some discussion about it. But I just can't imagine him really having like nines full or queens full really all that often in the spot. He bets 125 into 180. So the pot's 300. If you call, the pot will be 425, and he's already put in about 200 in his stack. So he's got about 400 left. So, if you were to basically shove here, I believe it would be for 525, I want to say. And I might, again, make an exploitable play where I might leave this guy some chips, where the math might be, all right, I'll shove for 525. I might make it like 400, 450. And the reason why I might do that is just because the function of a lot of times at low stakes, if a guy busts, he might leave. He doesn't want to leave, so he might not call all his chips, but he might call like a smaller type of bet. Do you see what I'm saying? So that he can continue to play.
Yeah. So I didn't make it quite that big, but what I did is I raised to 275. I was trying to find an amount that I was sure he would call.
So you raised to 275. Yeah, raises to 275.
150 more.
But do you see how even here, like little things, right? Exponential in terms of value, because this game's all about value. I would have raised more on the turn. Like I would have made it 90. And if he called, the pot would have been, instead of 180, it would have been 240. And then, if he bets the river, now you can really shove here. But I think that that's still too small. I would make it like 425 to 450, something like that. So you make it 275?
Yeah, and then he thinks for a while. He thought for like a good 20, 25 seconds. And then he asked if this is a cooler situation, said he's not good enough to fold, and he called.
So UTG calls. Okay.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening?
He had pocket nines.
Wow. Okay. UTG has 9-9. So what did he do wrong here on the river, or just in the hand itself?
Well, I mean, he could have gotten a lot more money on the turn.
Well, no, I'm a little bit surprised that he has 9-9, right? I'm surprised that he's got 9-9 because of that turn bet sizing. I don't think the turn really is the mistake here from him, though, because if I've got 9-9 here and you're raising the turn, I really do feel like you have a lot of Jack 10 here, more so than like Queens up, right? Because Queen 8 and Queen 7 are sort of weird hands, and you might raise off with Queen 7 on the flop. But what is his big mistake here?
It must be sizing on the river then.
Well, what is he supposed to do to your... I mean, if you're in his spot and you have 9-9, right, and you bet the river 125 when you fill, and the guy raises you to 275, what would you do?
I mean, I would push for sure.
Well, of course. What do you lose to?
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing you
Queen,
lose...
Queen.
Yeah,
Queen.
But I mean, Queen, you're going to 3-bet that pre-flop, right, most of the time. I would think. I mean, I guess, once in a while. 8 is very unlikely, right, because you call the flop bet. When the guy bet the flop, you call with a guy behind you. That's very, very unlikely. Yeah. You have to arrive there. So 9-9 is a no-brainer shove. Now, we can go down this road because it's like, okay, you made it 275. Now let's say, UTG shoves. Am I folding? No, never. I'm never folding Queen 8. I've seen you just, at the low stakes here, you can just be too far up in terms of pure sort of hand strength. And I'm not talking about like having the second one-card nut flush. That's a really good hand where you could like raise fold or bet fold when you've got like the king of spades on a 4-spade board and you bet and somebody jams on you. It's very easy for them to have the nut, and that's a very underbluff spot. But in a situation like this where you've got one of the top full houses, I would never fold to a 3-bet all-in. So this guy lost out. He lost out huge in value because I'm assuming that you're calling to the bet 3-bet all-in.
Right.
I would assume. I mean, I would certainly call to the bet 3-bet all-in.
Yeah.
So I would just say that you got lucky that this guy didn't play his hand well, basically. At least on the river, right?
Right. Yeah, I was wondering if on the river is that always a raise, even against like the tightest
Oh,
player.
absolutely.
Right.
Absolute. Well, I mean, again, you say he's a tight player, and now, like I said, at a higher level, he might be not leading out with aces or kings, but I mean, you really only lose to nines here and pocket queens, and it's not really consistent with the line on the turn in terms of bet sizing. So,
Right. Yeah, that's a
yeah,
good
this
point.
has to be a raise for sure.
Great.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the call. If you like what you've seen here, please hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this call in hand, hit the like button down below. To check out crushlivepoker.com, click on the link in the description. Use the code YTA300 to get the first 30 days for free.